I would love you to give a warm round of applause to our first Fireside Chat guest in Mr. Neil Hutcheson. Very fancy with the microphones and all that.
We are, we've got two, double I help.
So Neil, thank you very much for giving up your time. You're the CEO of Software NI. I'm sure everyone in the room will know what Software NI is, who they are and what they stand for, but who is Neil Hutcheson? What's your journey been to get here in such a pivotal role?
Okay, great question. Well, good morning. Firstly, I just want to say probably the most important thing that I want to get across. It's a thanks to you, Kieran. I just love what you do, and in a world that's clearly going to become ever more technical and connected with devices, it's this sort of human touch and the things that you're cultivating and the people here that to me are probably the most important going forward in a world really where we don't know where we'll be in 10 years. So thank you for that. And also, as you may know by the end of this panel, I'm not the type of guy who probably seeks this sort of thing out for myself. It's normally other people. So thanks to the people who I can see who encouraged me to get up and do this from a growth perspective. So 20 minutes of the life story, is it? So where to start? To me, like career's never really been a thing that has been separate from life. I'm quite missional as a person, so I'll talk a little bit about how I think I got here, looking back the way anyway. So grew up in the classic middle class household, bit of a tricky upbringing if I'm honest, but one of the things that was really good for me on reflection is that I had different groups of friends that were in trouble all the time with the law, stealing cars, taking drugs, and I somehow, let's just say, got on the edge of that. I'm realizing there's a camera here, but I somehow am still alive, I'm just going to say. But I also went to a school whereby there were very smart, able people who had, on the face of it, great lives. So I had a great friend group there, and then I was into sport and various other things. So, at age 16, finishing my GCSEs, I was probably the type of guy who wanted to leave and get straight into work. But parents who were very sensible, career civil servants said, no, A-levels. So scrambled through the A-levels, got to the end of the A-levels, wanted to work. No, university. And I'm really thankful for that, obviously. But I had so many influences dragging me different places at that age. So went to study a general business type degree, but with a work placement. And that was how my dad convinced me that this would be a good thing, because I could get into work before I finished uni. And all the while I'm playing sport, and that's a big part of my life. But of course, what I do midway through uni, I tear my ACL. Now this was in about 06, 07, and for me, that's probably the start of the first midlife crisis. I joke about this, but I actually think on reflection, hugely pivotal moment, which totally turned my life. So I'm in a work placement, and it's all about technology, digital transformation. So that's really where I'm getting a thirst for what tech can do, and that's wonderful. But at the same time, I can't play football anymore. And it took me probably 2 to 3 years to eventually get over that. Back then, there wasn't Instagram, YouTube, a lot of the help and support that you might have now. I was pretty lost, if I'm honest. And as a result of that, I think coming out of uni, despite having the offer of a job, I was sort of thinking there's got to be more to life than this, Mr. Commercial, et cetera, which is where I felt I was. So within I think 6 to 9 months, I was looking for more. And because I'd actually grown up with a lot of people who, unbeknownst at the time, were suffering, we backed on to a big housing estate. And I was this sort of middle class kid, but had friends who were really struggling down and out, but actually felt really comfortable with different types of people like that. And that was a really good thing. Again, on reflection, I didn't know it at the time. So I was really drawn to trying to get into like the third sector, human rights, actually helping and being more of like an activist, because I felt compelled that there's a lot of people out there who weren't maybe as lucky as I had been. So long story short, I spent about 6-7 years in a rights-based organisation, a charity which was helping young people in the care and the justice system. And really what it was, the role was a merger of, can you start a scheme or a programme that could help young people who are the worst off in our society get into employment and connect them with employers. That was the crux. So the mission was basically base yourself in social services, second it in, and bring some order to what that looks like, and then try and set up schemes with employers. And it's because it's within the health trust, you've 22,000 employees, and what you have is great opportunities. So we were able to do quite a lot of work, but through that period then, of course, I was then working, going into prisons, working with people who I felt entirely comfortable with, because I'd actually had great friends who'd kind of been through that as well. So in the morning, a typical day genuine would be someone who's down and out, potentially suicidal. I'd be trying to connect with them and trying to understand what the issues were right across people's lives. And in the afternoon, it would be put a shirt and tie on and go and talk to politicians and say, here's how you need to change the systems. And that just went on and on and on. There's a whole range of other things. So we were able to use things like legislation and understand policy and understand how systems work, so that you don't have so many people that are failed by the system. That was just obviously a life changer for me at the personal level. 6-7 years later, time to move on. So through my life outside what I call career, really interested in technology, really interested in photography. So at that stage then, more and more people said to me, Neil, you're obsessed with photography, why don't you give it a go? So finally took the jump left, ended up traveling around the world with my other half at the time, and we relocated to Dublin, and I gave photography a go. So doing houses, doing events, but the real stuff I was interested in was documentary photography, and the thread, of course, was that you would then photograph and work with people who had an issue that you wanted to then put up in lights. So that's where my work centered. So I'd be going into communities, meeting with old friends who had come out of jail, photographing them, talking to them. All of that sort of stuff was just coming back to the surface. Following a passion as well, you know, going into exhibition, getting exhibition work, selling some of my work, just all of that stuff. Really, really good. Anyway, came back up from Dublin, reality check. Mum and Dad looked at me and said, Neil, what are you doing with your life, son? Would you think about a real job again? It's just fascinating when I think about that now. It was obviously with the best intentions. So this is about 2018 actually, and I'd also been on a charity board, AG&I, some of you may know, and they run retail stores. So I was then the chair of that sort of social enterprise. So I got to know quite a lot about financials, how business works as well, and I'd obviously been self-employed. So Federation of Small Businesses, and I can see Alan Lowry here, and is Kieran in the room as well? Kieran Kelly was due to be. I see some familiar faces. They were hiring, and I managed to bag a job with them. A couple of promotions later, Brexit happens. You learn all about working with politicians, legislation, working with different types of companies, etc., etc. So it got to the point where I was about 6 years there, and the opportunity at Software and I came up. And I think my thread, having tinkered on the side for many years in technology, done hackathons, lots of friends in the sector, combined with the experience I'd got in those various settings, made the board think, right, here's someone who could perhaps help drive our mission on.
Wow, Nate, firstly, thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's exactly what this event is about. Real people with real stories, having real conversations. I didn't know a lot of that, and I wasn't expecting that, but it makes perfect sense to the man you are today with the ambition you have for this very, I suppose, life-changing, economy-changing vision of Software NI. If you could maybe tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so Software NI is it's a representative member-based organisation, and it was started officially in 2022 by 6 companies, some of which you'll know. One just up at the corner there, Kainos. And I think there's been previous incarnations of representative bodies for the IT or software industry. There's an awful lot of really good industry bodies out there, you know, your NI Chambers, FSBs, etc. But I think the overarching feeling from the software industry was that we needed an independent voice, and given that we've got such a strong sector, you could potentially have a bit of an empathy gap. Oh, well, it's all fine. Whereas in actual fact, 2 things. 1, AI, technology change, and 2, how do you actually accelerate and bring far more people into the software industry, right? If you've got a good thing, you should try to grow it, rather than say, we've got a good thing there, let's leave it. So they started this, and we got our first CEO in, I think, 2023, David Crozier, many of you will know. and I took on the role in October just of last year. So the board, with David, created a vision, which was, okay, how do we accelerate the industry, and what could we aim for? So we reckon there's about 25,000 people work in the extended software industry. And software, just to be clear, you could be a software sort of vertical company like a Kainos, where you develop your own products and install the likes of Microsoft and so on. But you could be a cyber, fintech, regtech, any sort of use case for technology includes, in our view, the software industry or extended industry. So that vision was set to actually go ahead and double the software industry in a 10-year period. And what they identified was 4 key work streams, where you might get 80% of the way there if you could optimize policy. So really it's about skills, sales, and surfing the wave of change. And that's broken down into 4 streams, which are schools. How do we maximize the number of children that are excited by and getting software sector related experience in your schools? Then your skills system, which is sort of uni, college, and right the way through mid-career. How do you optimize that? Then sales, right? We've got phenomenal software service and product companies here, like truly world class. But the thing that's different here is that their scale isn't necessarily like OpenAI or Microsoft, right? But they're still great and competing on the world market. So how do you accelerate the sales there? And then the sector future is the 4th area, which is, right, we've now got a wave of technological change and various other things. How do you attempt to ensure your companies who are really successful now integrate AI and actually surf that wave? But then how do you encourage the next generation of AI first companies to start? Big believer in building and so on. So those are the sort of 4 pillars of the framework.
You'd mentioned one of the pillars being the sector future, and you also mentioned AI. It's a buzzword none of us can escape from. I don't think we can. I don't think it's possible. I'm only having conversations with Rob and probably understanding the massive impact it's going to have. How will AI impact the companies you're working with regards to schools, to jobs? Because I'm assuming with change, it could make many of those jobs obsolete in the coming years.
Yes. I mean, so this is what the world's grappling with. So I'm going to give probably my own analysis based on all the things I read. This is something we're grappling with right now. There's active roundtables, conversations, things going on. Everybody's reading the latest article. Everyone's watching the latest Sam Altman interview yesterday at Snowflake to see what's he saying today, where's the clue. So I'll try and disaggregate some of that. At the global level, the World Economic Forum says, right, we might lose 90 to 100 million jobs, but we'll gain, say, 170, 180. So the general consensus is that through every sort of technological or industrial advancement so far, you lose and you create, and the pie grows bigger. My own personal view is that this is different, and it's only different insofar as that the aspiration or the thing that a lot of the big firms think they can get to is this thing called AGI, Artificial General Intelligence, and that is different from ASI, which I'll cover, Artificial Superintelligence. But it means that if you're at a computer, typically, basically anything that's done at the computer can be done. If you combine by machines, and if you combine that with robotics, which is really taken on a new head of steam, and in time what you see is the unit cost of that go down. Your TV used to be really expensive, everything goes down with time. If we do get to where that looks like it can go, there's a high chance that the way we live now is not going to be the way we live in future. There's a key caveat to that. We as a society and global world can choose. So it could get to a point where we have, and I think we will have the technology available, but we actually say no. Some countries may actually say no if they can remain competitive from an economic perspective. But there's no doubt jobs are going to be shifting. There's going to be a really turbulent time ahead. Again, back to that sort of surfing the wave. What we're trying to do is say, well, there's going to be change, but as humans, we're really adaptable. We're good at riding the waves of change. How do you give the foresight and encourage the maximum number of people to surf that? So very briefly in terms of timeframes, I think in the next year you're going to see, so actually I'll take a step back. My own mental framework for viewing this is we started with a chatbot, then sort of reasoning models have come to the fore. Now we're in the agentic thing I guess wave or era, but this era is really short. It's months rather than many years or a decade. And so by the end of this year and into next, you're going to have human synthetic colleagues basically. So you'll have agents joining the workforce. That's how it's been termed, where in effect you as the architect will say, we need to achieve X, and you'll send multiple agents off to do that, and you'll come back after your water cooler break or coffee or lunch, and these things will be done. So that's like the tipping sort of forefront edge of it. And that's a really, really good thing, because it means you're freed up. But as more and more people get that, then the comparative advantage recedes, and invariably companies and countries are going to have to decide where the economic value lies, because that will be a market force which can't really be contained. And so that's where I think talk of basic income and trying to supplement people's income who maybe can't surf that wave comes into play. So I think really this time next year, but certainly by 2027, we'll know how quickly things probably are going.
When you mention the massive change, I'm going to be honest, I feel you feel a bit of anxiety in your stomach, you feel a bit of fear, probably out of lack of knowledge, because your words were, we don't know what the world's going to look like. There's a lot of small business owners in the room. How would they equip their people to navigate such a fast pace of change?
Yeah, so if you're a non-technical small business, there's a route for you here right now, which is the AICC, Artificial Intelligence Collaboration Centre, and that's been set up, brilliant foresight by people in the sector and government here to equip you with minimum 20 days of free sort of consultancy to look at how you can integrate AI into your business. So if you're a non-technical business and you haven't done that now, I think that's really, really great service. And from there, you'll be probably passed on to other areas. I think there's a disaggregation and a difference between the non-technical and the technical businesses. I would be fearful for some technology software companies who have crafted and built wonderful software solutions for many years that there's two things we see in the market now. One, there's a pause on certain investments, certainly from global companies, and that's partly, I guess, the economic Trump effect, but partly because we're seeing those efficiencies and things and spend questioned because AI can start to do a lot of this stuff. So
I think it's easy to talk about being fearful of AI because we don't know, but somebody, obviously you're an industry leader in that. Let's look at the other side of the coin. Staying within Northern Ireland, looking 5 to 10 years ahead, what excites you most about what's coming?
Yeah, so I think we have a great opportunity to encourage people, whether you're in school, whether you're in university, whether you're in this room and you're tinkering, to build. It's never been easier now to build. These tools are absolutely unbelievable. Like I get goosebumps as I say that, because I'm just so excited about what I'm seeing and hearing from friends and the stuff that I'm doing myself, and that's before you even get to other companies. So I'm at Software Now, what we're going to be encouraging is quite literally cash incentive prizes for people in schools to start building. The 10, 11, 12-year-olds, the people coming through who typically would have to go a route. And it's not that university's bad, but there's so many other ways to do it that we've all seen, apprenticeships and so on. So I'm really excited for the potential of new AI first companies, and I'm no doubt there's somebody, at least in this room, who's building one. That's a really great opportunity, and if you're building AI first now, your ability to grow and accelerate and scale is just unparalleled. So
it's so fascinating, and it's almost just to close the loop with this, I suppose, insight from me, because it almost, what we're talking about is like there's a system that's been ingrained for a while. It's collapsing because of AI, but it can be very much a positive thing, which you've done before with your old job, which is to completely change the system for the betterment of people.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that. It's a great statement. I think right, there's so some of the conversations we're having at the minute are right. The education system just had a curriculum review, right? So we were all over that, trying to ingrain some of the things that you'd want to see, and we got some good wins. So the announcement was made this week, and one of the recommendations was that all post-primary schools, there's about 190, should be fully and wholly engaged with industry. And we basically want to try and match a software company to every one of those schools. And the reason is because you've only got 1 in 4 schools actually has a software teacher. If you've got any sort of skill generally, and your head can be turned by the great salaries in industry, it's hard to get enough teachers in general, but especially if you've got software skill. So we're trying to adjust and change and shape the curriculum, but actually ultimately what you want are people coming out regardless of what they've learned with a certain set of traits. My own view would be that like the ability to learn is one of the most important things. The ability to self-regulate. What was that call we had yesterday where Kieran, if you don't mind me saying, shared that he'd done a talk and what did you say? You thought it went shit?
Yeah, my words were.
But we had this moment on the call where he said to me, was able to reframe, and this is how I did it. But that was basically self-regulation. So if you can learn to learn, you can self-regulate when the shit hits the fan, and you kind of know yourself. No matter what you've studied, if you come through the education system and that's broadly what you can have at the youngest age possible, you'll find your way. And that's pretty much, from what I understand, what companies are looking for in terms of employees, et cetera, et cetera. That comes back to the adaptability as well. So school's really interesting and education system's interesting, but the more and more I see and hear of stories of people who just buck the trend and go their own way, I think we need to encourage and find more ways to create people who find their way out with those sets of traits.
I love that. I think that's a lovely way just to end the conversation. Neil, thank you very much for your time, your insights.